3, 2, 1.
I told you before to be careful where you put your legs.
I was only trying to be helpful.
I can help myself. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on.
For 7 decades, Michael Caine has been among the world's most renowned and recognisable actors.
It was just what I needed. A 1-inch god with a 2-inch penis.
The star of classics like Zulu, The Man Who Would Be King, and The Cider House Rules.
It's a miracle no one was killed.
But also films that brought his career to the brink of complete implosion.
I made a mistake.
Somehow, he has always found a way back.
You're a big man, but you're in bad shape. With me, it's a full-time job.
In this epic podcast series, we will watch and review every Michael Caine movie, from the greatest hits
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
to the incredible misses,
You failed to maintain your weapon, son.
and take a deep dive into the life and work of one of the world's most recognisable film stars.
His name is Michael Caine, and no one will forget his name.
To understand how he has made the mark of Caine.
Well, you all settled in? Right, we can begin.
For God's sake, come in.
Hello and welcome to the Mark of Caine, our ongoing ultramarathon through the movies of Michael Caine. We've reached 1969, which of course was a tipping point for the Love generation, and after a succession of increasingly odd films, we find Caine miles from Woodstock, uniformed up and ready for some more conventional war action. I'm Michael Foley, and I'm joined as always on this journey by Stephen Black, the front of house guy for the Mallow News Twitter hypermarket. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Mick. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sort of, it's been a tough road for us really since the Ipcris file on this. And that's a few years back now in Caine time. We've seen some terrible things like.
It is. I mean, if this is, as you describe, an ultramarathon, that I think I'm at the stage where I've had an allergic reaction to one of the many caffeine gels that I've eaten, and I'm currently voiding my bowels in a ditch.
I'd like to say it's a terrible way to talk about Deadfall and the Megas, but it's absolutely accurate. It's absolutely accurate. It is a cinematic voiding of the bowels.
I'm not willing to leave this movie out of that category either. If anything, this is just I was reaching for a dock leaf and found a nettle, you know?
No, we're going to have, I can tell we're going to have problems. We're going to have problems today, but we'll get to that now. At this point, he needs to pull this around now. He's had 4 or 5 awful films, really, and he needs to start showing a bit of form. He needs something with an edge. He needs something that, most importantly, makes sense. Like the Megas, Deadfall, these things were just a mess.
I don't think it's important that I don't think he needed something that made sense. I think he needed something that made money.
Well, that too. But I mean, just for himself, just for his sort of look. You know, I'm thinking of Caine and the Oscar legacy, the Oscar nomination legacy, and all that stuff. Like his actual standing as an actor.
I don't think he's been standing as an actor has anything to do with it. I don't think that's for him. I don't think it's certainly a pressing concern. I think as far as he's concerned at this stage, you know, he's ultra aware of the work that he's doing and the quality of the work that he's doing, and he's honest about that. But at the same time, he's not exactly knocking down the door of every art house or independent director in the system trying to, you know, get them to work with him. It's just he's rolling along. He's taking the jobs where he finds them. He's taking the money, and he's hoping they're hits based on the previous work of the director or the writer.
Yeah, well, I agree with the last bit of what you just said. We'll get into it. I think he is trying, but I get the impression, certainly in this film and in the choices he makes after this, that he was pretty well pissed off with the stuff he was doing before and he wanted to change. But anyway, we get stuck into this. So after a bunch of movies, as we say, trying to overreach himself, he's back again with another movie with a message. Really, this is the North African desert. He's blowing up fuel dumps in the 1969 war movie Play Dirty.
Forget the medals. Throw away the rule book. In this man's war, if you want to survive, you play dirty. Michael Caine as Captain Douglas, leading a bunch of desert rats whose only ideal was a lust for money and a pact to play dirty. No target impossible. Rommel supply lines, oil dumps, convoys. If you failed, you bought it. Murderers, thieves, deserters, handpicked by an unscrupulous colonel.
War is a criminal enterprise. I fight it with criminals.
The way to survive here is to watch, listen, and say nothing. I play safe.
Ladies first, and forget the sentiment. The name of the game was Dirty. And they played it to the hilt. Chivalry dies here. No conscience, no appeal. Forget honor, forget duty, forget the rules. Just remember one thing. Play dirty.
Cable's going! Get down!
So Play Dirty, it's North Africa in World War II. It's the latter stage of the Desert War with Rommel. And Colonel Masters, who's played by Nigel Green, that we mentioned there, who was also the colour sergeant in Zulu, you know, the gentleman has a bottle. And he also plays Dolby in the Ipcris file. He's back, and he leads a ragtag sort of commando unit made up of ex-cons. They kind of glossed over me, but I think we had a couple of drug addicts, a rapist, a murderer, and the drug addicts were also homosexuals, I think. Am I right?
They were lovers. They were
Yeah.
lovers, yeah. Go on, because we'll get back to this, because this is something I want to dive in more detail. But keep going.
Okay, cool. Okay, so anyway, they're a commando unit and they're doing special ops in the desert. The main outcome of these special ops to this point seems to be just a lot of dead soldiers and not a whole lot of success. But they're given one last chance by Brigadier Bloor, who's played by Harry Andrews, who approves a mission basically to go and blow up a key fuel dump that's used by Rommel. But he wants Masters to put a British officer in charge. So while secretly taking the credit for the whole idea with his superiors, Bloor arranges for Michael Caine, who plays Captain Douglas, who's an engineer with British Petroleum, and he's kind of basically pressed into leading the mission, even though he doesn't have a whole lot of combat experience, it seems, but he has an awful lot of experience of being in the desert. At this point, they're not too bothered. Bloor and the superior, the commanding officers aren't bothered because they don't really care whether anyone comes back dead or alive. So off they go into the desert, led by Caine, with this other character, Cyril Leach, who's played by Nigel Davenport, who's another one of these criminals. I think was pulled out of prison to join this unit, and who's effectively the real leader in the field, if you like, and a bunch of other guys disguised as Italian soldiers. So they have various adventures. They massacre a group of tribesmen at an oasis. They pull their jeeps up a really steep cliff, kind of it reminded me actually of the ship in Fitzgeraldo, just pulling it up with these cables. Then there's a lot of mundane stuff around sandstorms, flat tires. Caine gets stuck on a landmine for a bit. That takes a while to get him out of that. One of the guys gets blown up in that, and then so they hijack an ambulance with a German nurse. There's a very odd scene with her wrestling Caine, and there's an attempted rape scene that I'd imagine we'll come back to. They eventually find the fuel dump, but it turns out that it's a fake. But Caine is still determined to find the real one. Leach just wants to get to the coast now and find a boat to get out of there. They reach where I think it's Benghazi is where they reach. They actually find the fuel dump, and the two guys agree that they'll blow it up as a decoy and then go get their boat. In the meantime, Brigadier Bloor has instructed Masters to stop the mission. Montgomery's making progress. He's about to take Benghazi, and they want all these fuel dumps saved because they need them themselves. But Masters can't contact the lads. So Bloor basically says, inform on, basically get the word out that the attack is going to happen. Let the Germans take care of them. So the lads attack the fuel dump, and everyone is killed, basically, apart from Leach and Douglas, Michael Caine's character. They hide out overnight, and they kind of wake up to find British tanks and troops coming into the city, taking over. So Caine says, come on, let's go surrender. Leach goes, well, I'm not so sure. But anyway, they put on a bit of a rag onto a stick, white flag. They go out, and before they even get a chance to surrender, they're gunned down by a British soldier who said he didn't see the white flag. And that is the grim and gritty ending to the film. Actually, that was the handiest plot kind of explanation we've had so far, I'd say. It felt like it to me, anyway.
Yeah, no, it was very concise. Fair play to you. You're getting well used to it.
Woo! Thank you very much. Now, cards on the table, right? I like my war movies. This is not a great war movie. It's a decent war movie, but it's essentially, this is movie me now. Cup of tea, few hobnobs on a wintry Sunday afternoon, sit down and watch a couple of hours of this. I would happily do that. This is you are not of that church, like.
No, I'm not exactly a huge war movie fan in the first place. And in this day and age, thankfully, we've got away from two-channel land, the two-channel land of our youth. If I was sitting down on a Sunday afternoon watching anything, I would avail myself of the many digital platforms that could provide me with much better entertainment than what is essentially, if you recall that very subtle scene in Zulu where the injured or the dying soldier sits up and goes, why, and then dies, and then the surgeon goes, damned if I know. This is basically 2 fucking hours of that.
Yeah.
Why? Damned if we know. We do what we're told. We die. We play. We do a bit of play dirty, and then we die. And what was the point? Okay, well, mate, and it's done in such a boring way. Like that fucking scene where they do a mini Fitzcarraldo or bring the cheapo. Like, Jesus, that's at least 15 or 20 minutes of the runtime. And you're kind of going, why is this taking so long? We know where this is going. One of the jeeps is going to fall, and that's pretty much it. No real purpose to it other than trying to show the value of Caine's character in it, but so boring. The mine scene where there's a scene where Michael Caine is retrieving a carjack from an ambush site, and he's stopped by Leach because he thinks it might be mined. So they have this, what would be a tense scene of, okay, we figured out he has stepped a mine, now we need to defuse it. And at the same time, the two lovers are stripping the bodies for loot, essentially.
Watches,
and one of them watches. They don't think for watches, and then one of them blows off. But he blows off screen. He blows up off screen. There is no tension whatsoever. There's no kind of good misdirect here. You know straight away what's going to happen. They're going to defuse the bomb, and the lads are going to get blown up over there. It's so any attempt at tension in this is completely undermined by poor direction. And let's face it, terrible characterization in it. You don't know who any of these people are, and you could care less. There is no tension about anyone blowing up because, to be quite honest, I'd be quite happy if they all blew up at the start of the fucking movie or as soon as they're introduced. You don't give a shit. It's a subpar Dirty Dozen ripoff, and I fucking hated the Dirty Dozen as a kid as well. I never really liked it. But it's just boring. And the whole message of war is hell, and there is no glory in war is undermined by the fact that you don't give a shit about that. They're all awful people, everybody involved, even the soldier on the ground who's having to carry out this work and compromise himself morally in order to get the job done. They're all dickheads. You don't care. Just fucking do what you like. Get caught in barbed wire. Get shot in the buttocks, as happens in the scene or in this movie. Just die. And roll credits.
Did you enjoy that? Did you? I think you were getting more out there than just play dirty. Did you? Do you feel better generally after that?
No, I think generally I'm quite good at I have this inner dynamo of rage that could just spin off things and just get a perpetual rage machine. This is all play dirty. This is nothing else that I brought from my own personal life. This is.
There'll be time in other movies for your personal life to intrude.
100%, yeah, but not this. Just kind of going, fuck's sake, Caine, here I am again. I'm just going, right, opening scene. Your man rocks up, fucking playing his fucking gramophone in the back of the Jeep, rocks on with a dead body, makes light of it. And you're going, what a dickhead.
No, you see,
then you're introduced to the two Nigels. The lad from Zulu is wearing an Aran fucking cardigan in the middle of the fucking desert. And they're knobs. And you're never going to let your fundamental problem is that you don't dig these kind of movies. You don't dig the idea of him wearing an Aran cardigan, for example. No, there's a lot there to wade through. But just on the point that opening scene that we're talking about, right? Basically, he comes in on a Jeep holding a dead body, and he's playing Italian music or German music. I think Lily Marlene, wasn't it, or something? And then he flicks it to British music when he gets close to the British lines. So this is to give you the impression of going from one place to the next. That's the idea, right? To me, Nigel Green comes out wearing this ridiculous Aran sweater, Aran jacket, which you would need at night time, to be fair, maybe not in the middle of the day. The whole idea is that he's an oddball, eccentric, he's off the grid sort of officer. That's the whole. It's rough and it's ready and it's not very subtle, but that's the nature of these kind of films. Now, let me just go through there's a couple of things. I want to go back to your thing about it being very boring and drawn out in places. And you have one very major supporter in that idea, and that's Caine himself. He did a really good interview that I sent on to you as well.
in a magazine called Films and Filming in April 1969, and it's all around Play Dirty. And he makes the point himself that it seems the film itself, the script seems to have been just torn up and redone, and there was a change of director at the very beginning of the movie. It was all very messy in ways. But he didn't see the final cut of the movie until it came out, and when it did come out, there was a hell of a lot more what he referred to crawling in the movie, which is there's a big long scene again of a bunch of lads crawling underneath barbed wire. But it speaks to what you're saying, that a lot of this stuff was drawn out really long. Like, you're right, there's about 15-20 minutes worth of stuff that could come straight out, which Caine himself agrees with. He said that's basically, in his words, that is what's basically wrong with the film. I think he would have liked more action in it and less of the drawn out stuff. To me, watching it, I would have been the same, but I would argue that there are parallels here with the Harry Palmer concept, right? That a lot of the mundanity around being a secret agent, which in the mid-60s was a sexy thing, according to James Bond, in the same way that being in a commando unit going out and they shoot him up, that you expect is going to end well in most of these war movies. Well, actually, it's a bit more dull than that. It's a lot of sandstorms. It's a lot of flat tires. It's a lot of hanging around while we get you sorted out with that mine there, mate. And I agree, it's not very exciting, but I think it's part of a piece that they decided we're going to make this film. Like, André de Toth was the director in the end, and he wanted to make an anti-war movie. Harry Saltzman was the producer. I mean, in a lot of ways, and de Toth also worked on the Harry Palmer movies. This was kind of a bringing back together of the Harry Palmer crew. They wanted to make an anti-war movie that was cynical and grim. And, if there was dull elements to it, I got the feeling they were happy enough to take that, because it fed into this whole idea of war just not so much being hell, but war just being extremely cynical, superior commanding officers fecking you over at every turn. And really, if you're Michael Caine or if you're any of the guys out in the desert, you have absolutely no control about what your own guys are trying to kill you as much as the guys on the other side of that mound.
But that's fine, and you could do that. But if you take Harry Palmer, or if you take the Icarus File as an example, there you could do that, but you could do it entertainingly. And this doesn't do it entertainingly. It makes it goes to the opposite side of showing mundanity, and it makes it boring. And that's a crime in a movie which is, as anti-war as it is, essentially supposed to be a movie with action, with momentum, and it doesn't have that. It stalls like the fucking cars do in the sand dunes. It's like you talk about okay, the mundanity of spying, then the mundanity of being in the army and the dirty work there. Look at Icarus File. It's a classic example of how you can do that well, by having good dialogue, by having good interaction with characters, and by having snappy and swift action scenes that don't overstay their welcome but further the plot. This doesn't have any of that. It's just plot from point A to point B. It's like a fucking Lord of the Rings movie. It's a long walk, and at the end, everybody really would be happy if everybody died. Obviously, that would have been a much better cut of The Hobbit, but there we go.
And interesting enough, when you talk about the final cut, I mean, even the ending, and I just to go back to that point, by the way, about it, I'm not comparing it. I'm not saying it's as good as Icarus. I'm not even saying it's as good as some of the films he's done. I'm not even saying it's
that's
one
fine.
of his. It's a solid.
You're agreeing with me. You're agreeing with me. That's all.
I'm not. You're saying it's complete dirge. I'm saying it's a solid, average 6.5 out of 10. If it wasn't so cynical and kind of grim in its rendering, it would probably have been on Sunday afternoon TV a hell of a lot more than it ever was. In reality, it's kind of lost. I mean, I found it interesting. Like, I mean, Martin Scorsese is a bit of a fan of this film. Like, he is.
You're stretching his words there.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. He said he liked the nihilism of it. He liked the pragmatism on all sides, as in the officers just having to cut the guys loose when they had to, politically and militarily, and on the ground as well. I mean, they witness an ambush of another British convoy, and they just let it happen. And to Scorsese, that's frightening. And I think there's an element of that kind of pragmatism, of that frightening pragmatism. You see that in Scorsese films as well. Now, I'm careful here. I'm not comparing this to Scorsese films, but I'm just saying that this is why I didn't mind it. I think also the fact that it wasn't the Megas and Deadfall, and I could follow it, I think was a big plus point for me. On the characterization, by the way, before I forget, you're right. No one cares about him, and I don't care what happens to them at the end either. But not in the same way that I didn't care about some of the characters in the other Caine movies. Again, I think none of these characters in the film are in any way likable. It's impossible to develop any kind of connection with any of them, which I think is the whole point of the film. Like the criminals are meant to be criminals. I mean, the Dirty Dozen you mentioned before. The Dirty Dozen is an entertaining kind of film with a lot of awful people in it, but there's a bit of humor in it and stuff like that makes you into. There's no humor in this. Like, it's just going from one disaster to another is what happens in the movie. And the lads are, they have no control over what's going on around them.
But you've no interaction with them. I think one of the characters.
Why do you need it?
One of the less. Well, but you need some element of characterization with people who are going to be on screen with you for fucking 2 hours. You do. You don't. One of the guys in the commando unit, his entire range is to chuckle maniacally. That's all he does. He has no dialogue other than he 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 he. The whole fucking notion of this crack commando unit that they go, they meet in a bar and Leach points out all the lads are going, and you're gonna go, all right, this is so and so. He's the strong man. He's a brute. These are the demolition experts. Great. This is the rapist. Hang on, what? Oh yeah, we need a rapist. Why? Yeah. Why we need a rapist? Yes, it's a commando unit. We need a rapist for raping, because that's what it. What the fuck? I mean, essentially, as my mother always says, you never leave the house without a rapist in your commando unit.
I want to come back.
True to form, he does get a chance as well. Like, it's fucking bizarre. Really, but again, I think the Toth. This is the end of his career. Essentially, it's the last movie he directed.
Yeah,
his last film. Yeah. Thank Christ, Jesus! I mean, there's a really poorly executed. Like, I'm not going to go into the what is a well executed rape scene, but there's an attempted rape scene in this again, which would like to think would exclude it from Sunday afternoon entertainment on RTE.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
But the way that it's shot and the resolution of it. So one of the injured members of the unit who sees the guy who got blown up in the mine sees this attempted rape happening and shoots one of the lads in the arse. Yeah. And then this alerts the superiors that something's going on. They go out and they basically see this captured German nurse attending to the wounded buttocks of the guy one of the guys who's attempted to rape, and that's it. There's no kind of what were you up to? And then cut to that has happened. They're aware of something. They clearly have some cop on as leaders and know that something has gone wrong here. Where do they store your one? In the back of the fucking ambulance with all the guys who have attempted to rape her.
Yeah. Look, there's some, particularly around that particular storyline of hijacking this ambulance with the German nurse in the back. That's god awful. I mean, even the scene. Did you find the scene? Like, what happens? I mean, they open the back of the ambulance and she basically tumbles out of the ambulance, wrestling one of the soldiers. Caine takes a step, and the next thing he's wrestling the nurse.
There's a real lust of the dust vibe. There's a real lust of the dust vibe to that. Is kind of going. Yeah. Why?
Didn't need to happen at all.
It didn't need to happen. Well, like the attempted rape scene didn't need to happen either. Or we're going to show the people that we know nothing about, who we already established are terrible, are terrible. No purpose to it whatsoever.
No.
But yeah, I thought it was. And then the conclusion of this fight scene is Leach Coalcocks are like, it's. Is this the Toth's interpretation of humor? Is this being played for humor? It's not funny, and it's not. So I'm not sure whether. Yeah, but are they? Was its intention to be humorous? This is 1969 after all.
He has a line, doesn't he, Leach, when he punches her and he says, "You don't know how to handle a woman," something like that, which is a bit like whoa. Yeah. But again, they're dislikable, hateful people. So you're kind of going, yeah, you're dislikable and hateful. So box ticks. But none of that needed to happen. I mean, none of that stuff needed to happen. Did you find? I mean, in terms of Caine's performance, I tell you what struck me at times about it was he looked a bit like a tourist walking around at times in his white chinos and a kind of fashionable kind of khaki overcoat and a pair of shades. He
insisted, and his insistence on wearing a cravat throughout the movie.
Yeah,
I thought it was strange.
Yeah,
it was odd. I think he was somewhat invested in this. You could see some light in between his eyes whenever he was on screen. Like it's a solid enough performance. But it's by no means is it the best thing that best performance he's put in behind the camera. But it's certainly more life to him than there was in the Magus or Deadfall.
Like, I mean, there's no doubt that he's invested in this, I think, because I mean he has experience of war himself from the Korean War. We spoke about that way back in episode 1. He's seen combat himself, and again in that magazine interview from April '69, he's quote is, "I would never appear in a war film that made any young man feel like going out and joining the army." So I think he's definitely invested in it. Now, I think the way the film evolved and with the change of director. It was meant to be René Clément, who was like a French director. I'm not aware of any of his work, but Caine apparently was very keen to work with him. And when he dropped off the project because he fell out with Harry Saltzman in terms of, I think, the direction of the movie, where he wanted to, what kind of movie he wanted to make. But to be fair to Caine, even said, I'm not sure what kind of movie Clément wanted to make. But he makes the point, Caine makes the point that Play Dirty resonated very strongly with his experiences as a soldier, basically being a pawn, getting nudged around the place depending on the politics of the commanding officers. Now, I'll come back. He makes a very, very good point in that interview about anti-war moves and stuff, which I'll come back to in a wee while. But can we, like, just to stay on Caine's performance itself? I don't think he's phoning it in on this one. I think he's trying. You're not so sure?
No, I think he's trying, but it's not an outstanding Caine performance. I'd imagine, like, when I think we don't know how in what sequence the film was shot, but I'd imagine at some stage during filming there was a kind of realization that he wasn't, making another Ipcris file or another Zulu here.
Yeah.
As much as he still wanted to get the show back on the road. I mean, as much as he claims he'd never seen the final cut, you have a realization when you're making something like this. You're hearing the dialogue that's been spoken to you, and you're saying your own dialogue. You must realize this is not the best work that I've done.
And he didn't like Almeria much either. That seems to have been a big issue.
Is it Almeria or Almera?
I don't know. Almeria, I don't mind. Whatever you want to. I mean, we'll put it out there. Let people tell us. I thought it was Almeria. I'm not really sure.
Oh, now you're saying that accent. I'm quoting
Almeria. It sounds better now, doesn't it? Anyway, he didn't like the place much, and this is I mentioned a little yarn in the previous episode that I was trying to remember, but he disliked the experience so much that he had written into his contract that he'd never make another movie there, which is impressive.
Yeah, but he said the Almeria at that. I'll go with your pronunciation. Almeria at the time was a top location or cheap location or alternative for westerns and war movies that were set in North Africa. So it was very busy at the time, and they had basically the production staff had their hearts broken whenever they had whenever they were working the main area of Almeria that had sand dunes, that occasionally, you'd see tanks going over one hill and you'd see cowboys and Indians coming over the other. So the production staff were constantly clearing up horse shit and wiping out horse prints just so that they could maintain the authenticity of the shot.
Yeah. So wasn't there one stage? Did a bunch of horses kind of basically invade the set at one point or something?
It was something like the ending of Blazing Saddles. It was kind of a crossing of the streams there. They had to halt filming and again do a big cleanup because the horses literally shat themselves, and that had to be cleaned up. Yeah,
there was Richard Harris was meant to be on this movie as well. It was as much as the directors were shifted around, the script was shifted around. Richard Harris was meant to play the character of Leach, but in Nigel Davenport's own words, Harris was acting like a bit of a pop star at the time. He actually was on set in Almeria, and he stormed off. He didn't like the way the script was getting fecked around with, so he said, "I'm gone." But he did sue him. He was down there for $150,000. So he sued for his wages, even though he didn't appear in the film.
Yeah, fair play.
Yeah, I have to say, I kind of doffed the cap slightly to him on that one.
It was supposed to be filmed. It was supposed to be filmed in Israel as well, wasn't it? Because the initial plot was that it was a group of Palestinians it was based on the true story of Palestinians who were engaged by the British Army to blow up a fuel dump, and then because it transpired that they needed the fuel dump, the British authorities informed them to the Germans, and they were all killed.
Yeah, that was it exactly. Yeah, that was exactly it. And
and even that would have more resonance because you could have these people who were former essentially colonists or people who were colonized by the British then agreeing to do this for the greater good of the war effort and then ultimately being betrayed by the British. That would have made a much better movie.
You're absolutely right. I cannot disagree with that at all. I mean, and you could still have had Caine in the film. And it would have all been fine. But you're right.
We all know how well he could do accents. I would have paid fucking cash money to hear him do a Palestinian accent.
Well, I think in this one,
this bloody falafel is awful. Alhamdulillah. Which way is Mecca?
Oh god! Like in this way, to me, he basically does a Bromhead. Like he's doing that thing from reasonably upright officer who has no experience of combat.
It's a kind of a reverse Bromhead, because he plays
whoa,
he's
what?
the reverse Bromhead. Google that, ladies, and especially gentlemen. If you want to get an extra 30 minutes out of your lovemaking, try the reverse Bromhead. So he's playing an engineer who outranks who ends up outranking the ranking officer in the unit. So I mean, that's a reverse Bromhead.
It is, but he also kind of learns about the horror of war and so on. Which I know. I can see you. I know. Well, let me address the horror of
war. It's so bad.
Yes.
Oh, the people die.
Yes.
Oh, people in charge do the bad thing. Oh, make us sad. Oh, sad face.
Well, let me
2 fucking hours of it. 2 hours of it. War is hell. People are bad. Fair play, lads.
Let me rebut.
Up next, water is wet.
Let me rebut by referring again to the interview and films and filming from Caine, and he's talking about his experiences.
Which you'll put into the description of this podcast as well.
Yes. What?
Yeah, there you go. That's your homework.
What? I don't know what that. I'm not even sure what that is. Anyway, he talks in that interview about the idea of because the interviewer makes the exact point you're making, which is, or does Caine say that the critics actually said no? Sorry, it's Caine makes the point that the critics at the time are saying, yeah, it's just another bloody anti-war movie in the middle of Vietnam and blah 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 blah. We know war is hell. He makes the point that at that time in 68, 69, the Biafran War, the Nigerian Civil War was ongoing. That there were still wars occurring. That the idea that we were all zoned out from it, well, it's still happening. That we still need to make these anti-war statements. He was in the middle of being involved in a charity at the time to help the humanitarian catastrophe that was Biafra at that time. He says in the interview that they managed to get together 300 tons of food. They raised £25,000, and even having done all that, he was still getting racist abuse essentially for helping these people. It was actually said to him in a letter that if you help these people in Nigeria now, these are the very guys that are going to be on our doorstep in 25, 30 years' time looking for more. It's incredible, really. But the point is that, yes, there's nothing new about Play Dirty. There's nothing new about it being an anti-war movie. Yet still there was wars like Biafra going on. And he was very critical of Britain supplying arms and offering support to fund that war. So he's making the point that, yes, that maybe people would get turned off, like you were turned off, okay, by the idea of an anti-war. But we can't stop making them because there's still wars going on.
Yeah, but what you could do is make them entertaining. I mean, nobody's saying you can't make an anti-war movie, but you can do it cleverly, and you can make it involving, and you can make it entertaining. And this is none of those things. And I hate to break it to you, but as you say, wars are still ongoing. It's not as if they played Play Dirty through the loudspeakers of the helicopters flying over Vietnam, and all of a sudden everybody threw down their guns.
That is true.
It was not a revolutionary movie. It was a box office dud.
But
another one in a row of them for him, and it made very little impact, if any impact.
I think though, as a piece of work for him to do, for him to be thinking, well, if there's kids in Britain in particular watching this film, getting away from that whole imperialist sort of way of thinking and this idea of being in the army is a glamorous thing. And
I know, but in fairness, this is now is like Caine saying that now. Caine like that now is like the lads, the lads on Twitter going on about don't worry about not getting your good leaving cert results. I did X, Y, and Z. You go, lad, those kids aren't on Twitter. They're not going to. They're all on fucking TikTok or Instagram. They're not going to be looking at your Twitter and go, "Oh yeah, the man is right." Caine, at his time, was in the late 30s. He's not talking to any teenagers. In 1969, there's no way they're going to see Play Dirty. There's no boobage in it for one, and there's no decent violence in it.
These are all reasonable points. I still think it was an okay movie. Actually, in that interview, it was very interesting how he gets stuck into the British movie industry as well, which becomes a theme, doesn't it, up through his career. He's given out about the quality of the kind of, the living conditions and the working conditions if you film a movie in Britain compared to America.
Which is hilarious considering that his best work to date has been in Britain.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think I'd be interested to compare it once we kind of stutter nearly across the finish line of this ultramarathon, is to see what percentage of movies overseas versus the ones he did in Britain were, good.
Yeah, maybe Hollywood's making them soft.
Well, soft. This bitching about the quality of the food and the conditions. It does seem really, really childish in terms of, but if you think about his background in terms of what the poverty he came from, he's really let that leave an indelible mark on him in terms of how he's let that affect his decisions, like, you know, or during his professional career. I mean, they certainly color it. It's, you know, you are basically taking jobs based on how comfortable you're going to be financially and, you know, personally during the shooting of the set, which is, again, there's no way to cater a career.
This is something that we're going to see a lot, particularly going through the 70s. When he gets married, and he has kids. We're going to see that. We're going to be touching on this a lot. But even in that interview, he's making the point like that. You know, I'm just going to get as much money out of this as I can. You know, I'm going to, whatever way I can do it, I'm going to shape it so that I can earn as much money as I can. And you're all right. Look, I take the point. Even when I'm saying it, it's just I do think he did this movie with a kind of a cause in mind, but it's not. It is not the number one consideration most of the time with Mick Caine. I absolutely isn't. And it's probably 50-50 here, even, you could say. But I take that. But I still think it's an okay movie, and I think he did a decent performance.
So going back to when we briefly mentioned about Caine's own war service in the Korean War, you know, drawing upon his experience there and basically channeling that into his performance here, I think it's important to kind of talk a little bit about what he did there. So he was conscripted. Well, he was doing national service, and he took the option. He could do 2 years in England, or he could do 1 year kind of concentrated service in Korea for the Korean War. I think it was 1952 when he went over there for a year. He had a terrible time. You know, terrible conditions, rat infestations, saw service, probably or definitely killed people, and would have, you would imagine, you know, incurred some sort of trauma as a result of it.
Got very close to death himself.
As per his generation, was something that was never really talked about in great detail. But you can imagine, as you say, it certainly colored his attitude towards war. But one aspect of his experience there that was not being that he's not drawn upon, that certainly has been represented in any of his movies, is his experience as official penis inspector for his unit. And I feel this is something certainly a 15-minute scene of this would have provided enough entertainment for me to get through. Play Dirty.
And they wouldn't even have had to change the title of the movie.
No, official penis inspector. Play Dirty - official penis inspector.
Can you explain what would have been involved in the role of official?
I think it would be a lot funnier. I think it'd be a lot funnier if I didn't and just left it at that. But yeah, I suppose I better provide some context. So, Caine, when he left England off, he fathered the child at this stage, so he was well aware of the intimate things that can happen between a man and a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, and so on and so forth. So as part of their orientation to landing in a foreign country, they were shown a succession of STD movies that were basically created by the army to who hilariously thought, you know, if you show a movie to soldiers showing them why they shouldn't have sex, they definitely won't have any sex when they travel overseas. But I think Caine was possibly the exception that proved the rule here. He was so traumatized by the pictures of diseased penises that he vowed never to touch nor look at another woman while he was overseas. So scared was he of having his proud British member decay and rot. So obviously the other lads in his unit, and I'm aware of using the word unit here, not in the penile capacity, but the other lads on his squad were not so careful. And since he was the only person not having relations with the local populace, the lads took to cornering him in the jacks and just going, "Will you have a look at that, will you?" Basically. Word spread. So basically he would spend his afternoons, lads would basically get out their lad in front of him. And he would basically kind of have a quick look at it, kind of, if it's seeping and it's less than 2, if it's seeping and it's 2 weeks since the last time you had sex, then it's an STD. That was initially how it started off. But however, the lads were so paranoid about this because, it may not look bad, but it could look bad soon. He had to basically provide, his penis was used as the control. So in an experiment, his was the control penis. So he would take out his penis as the control penis, and kind of like a Dulux color chart. Maybe this would be like purple stardust or something like that, or something like that. Would basically as a color match, they'd get you kind of do alongside just to show what a healthy version would look like versus a diseased one. As he says himself, if any of the MPs went into the latrines and saw 3 lads hanging around with their penises out, he may have gotten again, and
Unless
no pun
unless he had
intended.
gone to public school.
Let's put it this way, Michael. It wouldn't have been the only dishonourable discharge.
Absolutely, Stephen. Absolutely. That's extraordinary. And you know what? I was when I was thinking about this, I was going to kind of do some lovely poignant clips of Michael Caine talking about his army experiences and the impact they had on him. I will now not be using any of those in this episode.
Yeah, I mean,
you've ruined it.
Are you telling me honestly, if in Play Dirty they didn't just have a slow motion version of a swaying, tumescent, infected penis with a piece of classical music, that would have been more effective in conveying the horror of war? You telling me that young fellas go to watch that movie could be going, no, I'm picking up the plow. That's it for me. Peace is the way. That would have been far more effective than 2 hours of complete and utter dickheads just stumbling their way across the desert to get shot.
I'll give you that. 10 seconds of a tumescent infected penis could have possibly ended. It could have been the scene to end all wars, actually.
Yeah, just score to Barbaro's Adagio for strings, like the bit in Platoon where William Dafoe is getting slowly machine gunned. Rather than that, you just kind of I think that would have been more evocative.
Oh my god, evocative, and yeah, I'm staggering, dazed after that to the marks for Caine. So we're not marking the movie, we're marking Michael Caine himself. Go on.
6.5.
Oh, that's actually very generous.
It's not, and it's actually going to be 6. You said it was a 6.5 movie out of 10. I think it was if it was there. So 6 out of 10. We're not doing half marks.
We're not doing half. No, we're not exactly. No. We're one or the other. I would agree 100%. And just for the librarians among you, the nerds among us, we have previously given 6 Caines for Gambit and $1 Billion Brain. So that's the level we're kind of pitching at. I think that's pretty reasonable. I was going to say 6 as well. So 6 for Play Dirty. Good man, Mick Caine. Look. Could we agree that at least this is kind of like a foothold in the slide? He's kind of slowed the slide anyway. That was at top speed with the Megas and Deadfall. Is he at least kind of on some way kind of more solid ground now with us?
Well, let's say if he was, this basically he was sliding and he was looking basically towards the precipice and he was looking for purchase. Yes, this is a handhold. However, when he looks up at the handhold, what it actually is one of those erect infected penises from his war days that he's gripping hold on to. It's not ideal. It's reminded of something terrible from his past. But you know what? He's not going to fall off the edge quite yet.
That is, I have to say, magnificent. And to be fair, it's almost as magnificent of what follows, because in typical Caine fashion, as we're going to find, he has this ability to pull himself out of the worst swamps, including the likes of Megas, Deadfall, Woman Times 7, and I'll throw Play Dirty in there just for the sake of it. Our next film is The Italian Job.
Hooray!
Hang on a minute, lads. I've got a great idea.
Christ.
Like, there has been... I was looking up stuff about The Italian Job recently. I hadn't realised there's such a library of stuff about The Italian Job, like documentaries about the making of it, anniversary, that documentary, the books. It was in the London Olympics opening ceremony, part of it with the minis. Like, it's bloody huge. I knew it was a big movie. I didn't realize it was so huge. But have you seen it?
I have not seen all of it. I'm aware of like the cultural impact of it. I guess has been so significant that, and I've obviously seen the terrible fucking remake, but I'm aware of the use of the minis in it, and I also know the ending and the kind of lines, the kind of key lines from it. So I'm aware of that aspect, but I definitely have no recollection of watching all of it. But then again, I could have early onset dementia. I can barely remember what happened last week. But I am looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see, because we'll talk about this next. There are a few alternate endings around The Italian Job, no more than there was with Play Dirty, and I'm going to leave you on this one because it has to be said. The original ending for Play Dirty was a lot cleaner than what it was. Like, the ending, obviously, is the two lads getting killed, Caine and Nigel Davenport's character. It was actually Caine and Davenport who pushed that ending. The original ending was a lot more clean, and sort of they get captured and they get to explain themselves away and they all survive. But Caine didn't want these guys getting their medals and walking off into the sunset at the end of the day. He said that wasn't the way it should be. Meant to mention that earlier on. I think it's important. There we go. I'm representing for Play Dirty like no one has ever represented before.
I no one will ever represent again.
Absolutely. So let's walk away from Play Dirty. Go and watch The Italian Job. Enjoy it. I think we're all going to enjoy this. It's a bit of a break. It's a bit of a break from what we've gotten used to. Come back next episode, and we'll go through The Italian Job. See what we make of it.
As usual, if you have any questions for us regarding The Italian Job, or you just want to tell us how handsome sounding we are, you can hit us up on Twitter at MarcoCaine2. Fuck you, MarcoCaine1. See you next time.
See you guys.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment. Only nice ones, though. Mean comments will make Alfie cry, and no one wants to see that. The Marco Caine podcast is written, researched, and presented by Stephen Black and Michael Foley, and edited by Andrew Foley. Music is composed by Stephen Black. If you'd like to get in touch, you'll find us on Twitter at Mallow News and at MarcoCaine2. And if you enjoyed this episode, you'll find all the rest wherever you get your podcasts. The Mark of Caine is a Mallow News 2 Cubes production. See you next time.